I'm Bruce Kuwabara. I'm going to moderate this session. I'm really looking forward to it. We have three extraordinary people. We have Adrian Guza from West 8, Rotterdam. We have Jeff Cape from Toronto, who is really a kind of entrepreneur, a cultural entrepreneur, really an incredible leader in the city at Evergreen. And we have Thomas Volz from New York, and you'll hear from them. I just want to kind of frame this session, it's the last session, and really talk about a few things and try to crunch it down, because you're going to see some great work by our presenters. Charles Waldheim taught at the University of Toronto, and although he didn't coin the term landscape urbanism, he really advanced its thinking, and now he's teaching at the GSD, heads up the landscape program. And a lot of what he was talking about became very apparent to me when I decided that I would chair the design review panel for Waterfront Toronto for the transformation of 2,000 acres of Toronto's waterfront. And I would start by saying that the real credit has to lie with individual leaders. Robert Fung really launched Waterfront Toronto, and John Campbell, the president and outgoing CEO, has provided, I think, remarkable leadership in terms of city building, dealing with everything that has been discussed to date. And then there's Chris Glasick, who is the vice president of planning and design, and he's really my partner because I'm accountable to him. What's happened in Toronto, it's a kind of wonderful moment because we realize that we're almost halfway there and that we've got a lot more work to do. But I think from the presentations you can see, and by the tours, you'll see that things are starting to gel. Because when we started 10 years ago, when I started 10 years ago, we had no evidence. We couldn't say, look at what we've done. We could only say, we think we want to do something bold, but we didn't have anything to show. And thanks to the process and the leadership at every level, we've managed to put together the kind of what I say is the compelling fiction of leading with landscape. And so we're halfway there. The reason I wanted to step up was because I saw ideas in motion that I had always wanted to be part of, which was lead with the public realm. That's what David Crombie always said, and I never really fully understood what he was talking about until now. Just a really quick story of the map, the two rivers, which you've now heard about, but very simply, a city on a lake, hence Front Street, the face of the lake. The second front, St. Clair, you've heard about that. The glacial lake that receded. Toronto's not flat, it slopes to the lake. Gutterman's grid, British surveying grid, I call it the open matrix. It produces all the high streets that we know so well, Dundas, College, Queen, all of the major streets within which our neighborhoods exist. And the shorter yellow line on the left is John Street, named after the founder of our city, John Graves Simcoe. If you found your own city, you too can put your name on any street you want. And the longer yellow line is the fold line, which is Yonge Street, the longest street in the world. But till now, everything has grown west. And the future of Toronto is south and east. The presentations this morning were pretty extraordinary. I think I know the city quite well, but through the lens of the presenters, you could see the geomorphology and the history and the layers in a new way, and I think that's extraordinary when someone can actually reveal something. There's a lot of good work and good minds in the house today. The ravines we talk about, I saw Kim Story in the audience, and she and James Brown, her husband, did a lot of mapping that revealed the ravines to me for the first time, and this was 20 years ago. And so it's really great that you see things coming into focus. The mandate for Waterfront Toronto will run out to 2023. It is supported by 3 levels of government. The premise is to invest in the public realm. They've invested about $1.3 billion in public infrastructure, landscape, and public engagement. The future will require another $1.65 billion, and I think it's going to be one of the great investments that will change the nature of how we live in relationship to the city and the lake. The long rectangle and the big circle are highlighting 2 initiatives that Chris Glasek actually popped, because within all of the collective leadership, sometimes it actually takes a bold act of individual imagination and leadership to trigger something really big. Sometimes it's not a group. And I give him a lot of credit, because he called me one night in the summer and said, what do you think of having an international competition for the central waterfront on Queens Quay, which was really, I thought, a lost cause. And I thought about it for a while, and I thought that why not? It was, what have we got to lose? And that competition was triggered by David Miller, our Green Mayor, on the cover of Vanity Fair, receiving a complaint from people who thought that the heads of the slips, the industrial slips, were congested and they were accident prone. And out of that competition, that little problem, and Chris's initiative, we had an international competition that drew talent from around the world. And I would say that when Toronto and Canada draws talent from around the world, which is frankly the history of the country, we're much, much stronger. We see the future in a bolder way. The other big circle is the second competition. Because of the success of the first one, the second one, which was won by Michael Van Valkenburg Associates, Liz Silvers here, and Ken Greenberg was on that team, was about naturalizing the whole mouth of the Don and not taking an entire river system and putting it into basically the Keating Channel, which is like a straw. And that plan, I think, is one of the biggest shapers of the future of all of the land that Mark Ryan was talking about. Is all structured around dealing with the flooding condition. If you think Corktown Common was an incredible idea, watch for the naturalization of the mouth of the Don. It's really big. Little Green Circle, I'm proud to say, we worked with West 8 and we won the Jack Layton Ferry Terminal Design Competition and Harbour Square Park. Just highlights, these are the goals of Waterfront Toronto, and note that design excellence is at the top. It's critical. Ground floor animation really is where landscape and buildings actually connect. But the bottom one, community consultation, is where Waterfront Toronto really, I think, has been outstanding. And they have built the confidence in all of the communities, all the stakeholders. You don't get to do these projects without having broad level of support. And just the projects that I'm very proud of, every project has come through the design review panel. I've seen amazing presentations, incredible design intelligence, true integrated design thinking. Everyone says we always work in integrated design teams. Well, actually, I'm not sure. I think I've witnessed it, though, on the waterfront. These are extraordinary works of construction and imagination. And it takes a team from Rotterdam to think that trees, maybe with silvocels they will get that big, but I just think it was such a bold image of, you can't see any of those really bad buildings. You can only see the CN Tower and this pedestrian promenade. And of course their love, we'll get into it again, of timber and wood. More of the reality of what's happening on Queens Quay. It's going to open on June the 11th. Come down to the waterfront. I'll meet you there. We're going to open the thing. I've been waiting for this for years now. It's under construction. It's going to open up. The trees are in the ground. And then Claude Cormier, on the design review panel, we always wanted to draw the urban imagination from outside, from Montreal and from Vancouver. And it's a lot of fun working with Claude Cormier. You also have to have the idea. Sherburne Commons by Vancouver-based Phillips Farvag Smallenberg is a 21st century park where the sustainable stormwater management is evident in the park. That's the fusion that the 21st century is about. And it's for winter and summer. And this is the kind of press that it gets, but all the waterfront design initiatives get a lot of press. It's fantastic. It's a virtuous circle. And of course, the view looking back from Corktown Common, overlooking the Pan American Games Athletes Village, it's going to be extraordinary. That village can only exist because of that landscape move. That's leading with landscape. And then the whole naturalization produces, I think, one of the greatest recreational opportunities ever in the city. Just a little plug for the Jack Layton underfunded, but it's going to go ahead. We know it. Shirley says it's going to go ahead, so we can't wait to do that. But here's an instance where the architecture is inspired by landscape. These are really the first lead-in questions for the panel. I think we will speak to the question of what does leading with landscape mean to your practice. Innovation we do want to export.